In this video, you're going to learn how to use the AppGyver no-code platform in order to build a to-do list. So we're going to be covering all aspects here of AppGyver. We are going to be using a REST API where we're going to pull up data for this list, and we are going to manipulate all of these elements inside of AppGyver. And so you're going to learn a ton of new things about AppGyver. You're going to learn how to build modern apps. You're going to learn how to interface with a REST API. There's going to be something in this video for everybody. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to go out and you need to find a backend for your REST API. Now, I do not want to cover this too much in this video. This is going to be a topic for another video. But one of the easiest ways is to go to restdb.io and set up a simple database. And the beauty about restdb.io is that it's very, very easy and very simple to get started. All you need to do is specify what kind of data your new database is going to have. So for instance, in this one, we have name and done. Name is a text, done is a bool. After that, we populate it with data. Here I have 3 records here: learn, AppGyver, write up, and profit. And right away after we're done, we have a REST API that's ready to go. So if I go on this, I already have a REST API that I can modify. I can create new records, I can delete records, I can modify records, I can search records. All of that is very, very easy. So once you have this step done, you can go into AppGyver and start building the app. So now that we have this step done, we can go into AppGyver and start building our app. Okay, so here I am in the main AppGyver screen, and I already have an app created that does exactly that. But in this video, we're gonna create an app from scratch. So we're gonna click on create new. We are gonna pick this theme here. We're gonna name our app ToDo 2. We're gonna click on create here, and now we have a blank canvas to work with. We have some sample elements here. We have some basic components here. We have some basic components, forms, layouts, lists, etc., etc. So what I'm gonna do is, the first thing that we need to do is we need to connect our app to our external REST API source. So you need to go into data here, and you need to start adding data resources. Okay, so I'm gonna click on plus here. I'm gonna add a REST API. I'm gonna call this RESTDB. Okay, short description is also RESTDB. Doesn't really matter. And the resource URL is gonna be a link right here. This is our resource URL that we get from restdb.io. And so we're gonna paste that in here. And now we have this fully set up. Okay, and so the next thing that we need to configure is we need to set up all of these REST API calls, beginning with get. So if we go into get, it already pre-populates this relative path, and there's nothing else that we really need to do for this generic collection get request. So if we go to this get request, we can go into test and run a test. And assuming everything is set up correctly, we're gonna get our results here back. So once you have the results, you can set the schema here, and you can click on save. And now AppGyver knows exactly what kind of data to get back and what to do with that data. We're gonna do the same for this individual record. And as you can see, it already populated this ID parameter here, and we have a URL placeholder, which is this ID that's been set up for us already automatically. Okay, and so when we go into test, we can't just run tests. We actually need to specify the specific ID. And this is why it's very useful to go and so you can pull up the results in your browser, pick any of the IDs in the records, and go back here and specify this here. And another thing that you can do is you can click on this ID parameter, go to the right pane here, and specify the default value so that you don't need to run tests over and over again. This is going to be optional. It's not static, so this could be modified later on. It's also not optional. And so we have it set up here. We're going to click on save. And then when we go to test, when we go here and we click on test, we're going to see this field pre-populated. And so now all we need to do is run test, and we should get the results here. And we do. And we do have the results set up correctly. They should have a schema already set in. And so we're going to do the same thing for the create record and update. For the purpose of this tutorial, we're not going to be doing the delete functionality. So all we need to do is create. So once we go to create, we need to enable it. We're going to go into config, And all we have to do is we need to set it up correctly. And so you want to go into schema here. You want to go to custom schema and you want to add the properties yourself, okay? Because in this example, when we are creating a new to-do, we only need to specify two fields. We need to specify the name field and the boolean for the done field, which is going to be false. So we're going to have the key name, title name, value type text, example value. We can set an example value, and this could be something like new item. We have that. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add the done property. So we're going to have done. I'm going to have, this is going to be a boolean, true or false. Initial value is false because it's not done. We're going to click on save. And so once we go into test, we can click on this custom object and we can fill out the field. So we have done false, and then we can specify the new item. So let's say I want the new item to be called new item. How original. We're going to click on save. And now we can run our test, and this should create it. So it looks like we have a status okay. We are going to go back to our API and we are going to see if it was created. Let's display all the records here. And so as you can see, we have a fourth item here, new item done as false. So that is working. The only thing that's left to do is to actually do the update record. We're going to enable it here. And we are going to configure it. So for the update record, remember, you need to specify this ID field, and you also need to specify the ID, as well as you need to send the body, the object in the body of the request, to specify what fields you want to be updated to what. So we need a URL placeholder here. So we're going to click on plus here. We are going to put ID. This is going to be number. This is going to be is static. No, it's not static. Default value. We can specify default value for testing. So we can go back here. We can pull up a random ID. We are going to put default value here. Is optional. No, it's not optional. And we are going to click on save. And so we have that first ID here. Next, we need to actually specify the schema. So in this example, we are doing ID, done, and name. We're not going to be modifying ID, so we need custom schema. We have this ID, so we're going to go into schema. We're going to set up a custom schema, and we are going to add two parameters. So we are going to add a parameter of name here. We are going to put name. This is going to be text, and we have this. We're going to save it. We're going to go to update record schema, and we are going to add a property of done. So we are going to have done. This is going to be done. Value type is going to be boolean, and initial value false. That's fine. And so now we can run a sample test. We are going to update a record for this ID. We have these properties here. We're going to put really learn AppGyver. Done is still false. We're going to click on save. And so if everything is set up correctly, we should have an updated record. Status is running, status is okay. So it looks like it was fine. We're going to refresh our data, and we have really learned AppGyver, done as false. So this is the first step. You really want to make sure that you are able to test these properly, because if you can't test them correctly, you're going to have problems down the road. So now that we have this data properly connected to AppGyver, the next step is to build the actual user interface. So we're going to click this X button. We are going to go back to the screen. Now, before we start building it, you want to tie it to the different variables. You want to tie this data. The way AppGyver is going to communicate with the actual REST API, with the data that we configured, is we need to define these variables. And you do that by clicking on this slider here, this toggle, and you're going to go to variables, and you're going to go into data variables, and you're going to add two data variables. The first one, and they're both going to be these RESTDBs, because that's the only thing we have. We're going to click on RESTDB. We're going to get a collection. We're going to add a data variable of collection. So I'm going to call this collection here. And now we're going to click on save. That's the first one. The second one that we need to add is a single variable. You're going to see why that's very important. And this is going to be a single data record, and I'm going to call it single here. And I'm going to click on save. And so now that we have these two variables defined, we can go back and start building our UI. So the UI is obviously a very subjective thing, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to build it. And so the first thing that we need to do is we need an input field. We're going to need an input field here, and we are going to want a input field to create a new to-do item. And we also want a button right here. So we're going to change this to a layout. We're going to put a container here. We're going to drag this input field inside the container. And remember, you have this tree structure that makes it really easy to manipulate elements. We're going to go to container. We're going to go into style. We're going to change the layout a little bit. We'll make it horizontal layout. And we can make it something like this. And then we're going to drag a button. Where's our button? Right here. We're going to drag it here. And this button is right here. And so this button, we're going to click on it. We're going to change this to add, maybe new item. This is the label. We have it set up here. This is set up properly. We have it all. So now we can create a new item. We also need to list existing items. And for that, I propose we have two lists. The first list of items that we haven't done yet, and another list of items that we have done yet. So we're going to have a title here. And this is going to be to-do items. This is the content here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop a container. And this container is going to have text. We're going to have sample text. So something like a paragraph is going to be fine. And we are also going to have a checkbox that they'll be able to click on that checkbox and specify whether the specific item is done or not. So we're going to go back to this container, to the second container. We're going to go to layout, make it horizontal. So the checkbox appears next to, so we actually have the title, we have the checkbox title, and we have the regular title. And so this is the kind of the list we're going for, is we're going to have a checkbox and the name of the actual label there, okay? And we are going to do the same thing for also items that have been done. So we're going to drag the title. We're going to copy this. And we are going to drag it here. And so now we have to-do items. And then we also have done items. We're going to go in here. And this is going to be completed items. Okay, and the idea is we will see all of these items in to-do. And then when we press the checkbox, they're going to move down here. And this is really easy to do with AppGyver. All right, so now that we have things set up, so the first step that I want to do is I want to make sure that all the items that need to be done are showing up properly. And if we go back to our data, all of these items have a done flag of false, which means that they're to-do items. So we're going to go back here. And we need to set up the right bindings to the database. The first thing that you want to do is you want to pick this container here, and you want to make sure it's repeatable. Okay, you want to repeat it, and this is one of the most kind of important elements to make things repeatable. We're gonna repeat it. Data variables. We're gonna get data variable, and remember we have that collection, so we're gonna link it to collection. And now, as you can see, we have those 4 items that are being previewed right now. Okay. And that is because we have 4 items here. And so the next thing that you want to do is you want to bind these elements to the right fields in the database. And that is also very, very easily done in AppGyver. So you're going to click on this field. The first thing we're going to bind is the title label. We're going to click on this ABC. And we want to go into property of data item in repeat, because we are binding it to an element inside the repeat object. Okay, we don't want to bind it to a random field somewhere. We want to actually bind it to the current object, if that makes any sense. So we have current, and we're going to bind it to name. We're going to click on save. And the same thing we're going to do for the value of this checkbox. Is going to be bound to the done field. We're going to go to current, and we're going to bind it to done. Okay, and so now we have these elements binded. This should already start to work. Our app should already work a little bit. So we're going to go back to the launch. We are going to launch this app, open in preview portal, and we're going to take a look if it's displaying it correctly. This is my second app, ToDo 2. We're going to open it. And as you can see, we have these 4 items here, and the checkboxes are not checked simply because these are not completed items. We do not have anything here, and that is something we're going to fix right now. And so the next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that the items that are listed here are not checked. The done flag is set to false, and the items that are listed here, the done flag is set to true, and that is also very, very easy to do. All you have to do is go in here, and this is this repeat. Now, we do not want to list the whole collection. We only want to list items where the done flag is set to false. So we're going to click on this. We're going to go back to binding type, and instead of data and variables, we're going to select the formula. Okay, and now in the formula, it's telling us that we can use this collection. And so we do not want to use this entire collection. So we can select all of this. We can cut it because we're going to be using it for later. And so what you want to do is you want to select filter here. You're going to select filter, and then you're going to paste. This is a function that takes list and a filtering formula. Inside the list, you're going to paste this collection. And the filtering formula, you can take a look here. They have some examples for this filtering formula that we need. There's lots of interesting things that you can do. You can filter by different fields. And what we want to do is we want to filter by the actual elements in there, okay? And so this is what we're going to be using. We're telling it to select all data, but we wanted to filter where done is equal to false. Okay, once we do that, we're still gonna see all the elements because they're all false. But in this example, in the second example, we wanna do same thing. We wanna repeat with, we are gonna do a formula as well, and we're gonna create a formula, but this time done, item done is equal to true. The next thing that we need to do is we need to bind these elements as we bound them here. So this is gonna be bound. The checkbox is going to be bound to the done element, and the text here is going to be bound to the name. So we're going to map the label to the property in repeat. This is current. This is going to be name. We're going to save it. And so we have the title, the text here bounded to the name, and we are going to bind the checkbox to the done elements. We're going to go current. We're going to pick done. Okay, so now we have that. The only thing that we need to do is we need to make sure it's displaying the finished item. So we're going to go in here. We're going to pick this. We're going to copy this formula here, and we are going to paste it here. So we are going to go into ResDB collection. We're going to set it as a formula, and we're going to paste it here. We're going to remove all of this. Now this done is going to be true, and this is fine. We have it saved. And so now we should have one item showing up here and a bunch of items showing up there. So we're going to go back to the app. And as you can see, we have a checkbox, and this says really learn AppGyver, and these are not yet finished. So the app is working as expected. The next thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that the checkboxes work fine, because the idea is I want to click a checkbox and I want it to immediately move from here to here and vice versa. So if I uncheck it, if I decided that I haven't really finished it, it's gonna I can uncheck it, and it's gonna move from completed to to-do items. And that the way you want to do it is you want to bind. So we have this logic pane here. We have this logic pane, and if you go in here, if you click on the component, you have these events here. So you have the checkbox on change, and when we change the checkbox, we want to set the proper variable, update the underlying data structure. So what we're gonna do is we're going to update record. We're going to drag and drop this update record here, and we are going to connect the two. Okay, so we're going to click on update record, and we have various inputs. Okay, so update record is a function. The way you should think about these ones, they are like kind of individual functions, which is pretty much what they are. And so this function here, it has inputs, and it needs to change things. So the inputs is going to be the data, and then it's going to go out and to change it. The inputs is going to be the different values, okay? So we need the ID of the field to change it. We're going to go to ABC. We're going to get property of data in repeat because we want the current field, the current item. We're going to pick ID here. The ID is set. And the record properties, we want to make sure that we are modifying the right thing. So for this, when they click on the checkbox, you want to invert the current value, and that's going to be saved. And that way we save the right value, and then when the app reloads, remember, this is a fully reactive app. When the data has been properly changed, the app is going to reload, and you will see that the values are different now. So when we want to go into formula, And we want to set something like this. We want to negate the value of this specific element, okay? So we're negating it. We're saying if it's true, make it false. If it's false, make it true. We're gonna click on save. Now, in terms of the name is gonna be the exact same thing. We're not gonna change that. So we're just gonna pass in the same name. In this app, we're not really changing the ToDo items themselves. We're only changing their state. So we're gonna bind it. We are gonna go into component properties, and we're gonna set it to current. This is current name. You can also set it to the component name or the current name. It doesn't really matter, but the point is it's gonna stay the same. So we're gonna click on save. We're gonna click on save here. And now we can refresh the app and we are gonna see if that logic is working or not. And so let's say we wanna do write app. We click on that. And as you can see, it moved down. Now it's completed. And it's in the completed list. The next thing that we need to do is we need to do the same thing for these other checkboxes. Because we only did it for the ToDo items, now we also need to do it for the completed. That way we can move it up if we changed our mind and decided that this item is not yet completed. So we need to do essentially the same thing. We're gonna map current ID, custom object, and all of that. So we're gonna go back here. We are gonna drag update record, checkbox unchanged. We are gonna connect it here. We're gonna click on this. This is gonna be bound to, you can bound it to a component property or property of data in repeat. This is gonna be the ID. So for the name, you can bind it to a component property or you can bind it to the property of data in repeat. Doesn't really matter. I'm gonna bind it to this one. This is gonna be name. We're not modifying it. And for done, we need a formula where we are negating it, right? So we're gonna put self, which is this component here, value, okay? This is the self, true, false value, is the checkbox check or not. We need to negate it. We're gonna save, and we're gonna save again. Now, if we go out and reload the app, it should do exactly what we wanted to do. So the app is properly loaded. We are gonna check this item, and it should go down the list. And now it's here. We're gonna uncheck profit, and now it's here. We're gonna uncheck all of them. And as you can see, the app is working perfectly fine. The only thing that's left to do is to add a new item here. And so that is also very trivial to do. We're just gonna send a post request to create a new item when they type something here. So we're gonna have an add new item here, component tab, and we are gonna create a record. We're gonna drag this here. We're gonna connect the two, and we're simply gonna send a new request with the data that they filled in here. So we have RESTDB. We're gonna send a custom object, done is false. The name is gonna be bound to a component property. This is going to be another component property. And this is going to be this input field. We only have one input field. And so now that it's bounded correctly, we have the done, that's set by default to false. And we have the name right here, the name that we are actually gonna go out and create is bounded to this input field here. And so we can click on save and we can go and test it out. Okay, so we loaded the app. So we loaded the app and we're gonna type a new item here. New item, we're gonna add a new item. And as you can see, it has been created here. So we can complete it by checking on the checkbox and now it's finished here. And so we can do the same thing for any item that we feel that we have finished, and it's gonna go below. And this is pretty much it for the simple demo that I wanted to show you. Obviously, as you can see, AppGyver is a very, very powerful platform. I really like these bindings everywhere. They allow you to create reactive applications as opposed to applications where you need to write code all the time. Because if you can bind elements, these elements can instantly react when the underlying data is changed. And so I really like AppGyver, of its functionality, of how it works. And so I hope you found this quick demo useful. I hope you've learned something new, and I appreciate you for watching. And so if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below with any questions or comments. Like this video if you enjoyed it. I really, really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will see you later in a brand new video.